Mr. Speaker, I rise today to deliver my response to the 2021-2022 budget for the Ministry of Agriculture, Waterways and Environment. Honourable Speaker, as we pass through the shadows of this pandemic, not by choice though, I strongly commend the Honourable Attorney General and Minister of Economy, Public Enterprise, Civil Service, Communications for delivering a well thought out budget that takes into consideration the plight of Fijians and focuses on Fiji's recovery from this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, this is an excellent and comprehensive budget that will support economic recovery, rejuvenate private sector activity, protect and create new jobs, improve livelihood of ordinary Fijians, give a helping hand to the poor and vulnerable while at the same time not losing sight of ensuring macro-physical stability. Mr. Speaker, the forecasted funds that the government is expected to raise in 2021-2022, there can't be any better expenditure bundle than what has been presented by Honourable Minister for Economy. And he needs to be commended for being the architect of this comprehensive budget. Mr. Speaker, we are all concerned and anxiously waiting for this pandemic to end so that we can begin our lives in the new normal. On this regard, the government has not shied away from its responsibilities. In fact, all ministries are working tirelessly every day, every night to battle the current pandemic. Our government has been able to secure adequate quantities of vaccine for its people when some countries are struggling with meeting their targeted vaccination numbers. Least we all can do is to promote and encourage people to get vaccinated, which will save lives and put our country back on track. We can all agree that it has not been easy for everyone, but we can all also agree that we can act with solidarity in getting our targeted population vaccinated. We have seen the impact of people not getting vaccinated, where people have lost their loved ones to COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, before I continue with explaining our plans for the three ministries that I am responsible, I wish to respond to some of the comments made since yesterday in this House by honourable members on the other side. Mr. Speaker, yesterday Honourable Kurindandri and some other members spoke about lack of funding provided to Ministry of Agriculture, or not enough funding. Mr. Speaker, the honourable members on the other side are stuck in the 60s and 70s era when the budgeting system was based on incremental budgeting. We have done away with that, Mr. Speaker, and most of the developing countries, and developed countries as well, are now looking at an output-based budgeting system, Mr. Speaker. And I will demonstrate, Mr. Speaker, in a minute, how the Ministry of Agriculture is bringing in efficiency in terms of every dollar of government investment, Mr. Speaker. However, Mr. Speaker, he was talking about that agriculture is farmers are not getting any support, and therefore the output in the agriculture sector is of their own doing. Mr. Speaker, that's not correct, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 2019-2020, the direct support to the farmers in terms of machinery, in terms of plant machinery, etc., was to the tune of $12.8 million. In 2020-2021, the direct support over and above the public goods, infrastructure, the technical advice, plant protection support, etc., was $13.2 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is in addition to the support in terms of dredging of rivers so their farms are not flooding, drainage work that through waterways that are undertaken so that their farms are protected, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there are massive support that the Agriculture Ministry is making to farmers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Honourable Kurindani was talking about, and other members talking about declining agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker, I just can't understand, Mr. Speaker, where they're getting the data from, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all I'm asking them is go to the Bureau of Statistics, that's the body, institution that carries all official data, and look at agricultural output data, Mr. Speaker, which I'll present in a second, Mr. Speaker, and I'll tell you what is happening to agricultural output, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, they just don't understand the difference between agriculture's contribution to the overall GDP and agricultural GDP output over time, Mr. Speaker. Time series data, Mr. Speaker, and I'll talk about that in a second, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the opposition members were talking about that the census report is waste of government money, 4.5 million. Mr. Speaker, just the last sitting, up till the last sitting, the members on the other side were harping about where is the census report, why is there a delay, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, after working so hard in this pandemic, when we were able to release the census report, Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, then now they're coming to this house and saying, it's a waste, 4.5 million, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, these are the same members that were asking for the census report. Over the last 2 weeks since we have released, not a single member from the opposition side, Mr. Speaker say, came to our ministry and said, we want a copy of that census report. Not a single member, Mr. Speaker say. They were continuously harping in this house, where is the report? Where is the report? When we have released the report, not a single member is now interested in the report, Mr. Speaker said. They also said, Mr. Speaker said, that the census report is no longer useful because Mr. Speaker said no longer useful because so many things has happened over the pandemic. Mr. Speaker said they have no idea that the census document is a static document, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said the census is about the snapshot of the variable under study at a particular point in time, Mr. Speaker said. The variable under study is agriculture sector. So the census 2020 census is a snapshot of agriculture in 2020, Mr. Speaker say. What happens in 2021, 2022, 2023, we have to wait for another 10 years and we take a census. Why 10 years, Mr. Speaker say? The census is a very expensive exercise, Mr. Speaker say. You can't carry out census every year, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, they were talking about other issues that I'll pick up in my speech, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, allow me now to comment on the Ministry's allocation for 2021-2022, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, agriculture's primary objective, two key objectives, is to provide food security for the Fijians and expand agriculture sector for the benefit of the country, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, we have done a lot, as Assistant Minister Honorable V.M. Pillai pointed out, to ensure that we secure the households with regard to food security during the pandemic, Mr. Speaker say. Have we not done that, we would have been in shambles, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker say, over the period 2010-2019, the non-sugarcane agriculture GDP grew at a compound rate of 6.3%, Mr. Speaker said. Tell them, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, it increased from $343.6 million in 2010 to $630.2 million in 2019, Mr. Speaker said. A massive 83.4% increase, Mr. Speaker said. The return on investment, Mr. Speaker said, every dollar that we invest in agriculture, Mr. Speaker said, every dollar that we invest in agriculture, Mr. Speaker said, provides $9 out in the agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker say, I asked them to use one of the accountants that they have in their side, Mr. Speaker say, to work out the return on investment in agriculture. The 2019-2020 period, the return on investment in agriculture, every dollar that you invest, government money that we invest in agriculture, provides return of $9, Mr. Speaker say, compared to 57 cents in sugar sector, Mr. Speaker say. So things should be placed in perspective, Mr. Speaker say. Mr. Speaker said, they're talking about the performance of agriculture, Mr. Speaker said. In 2020, agricultural outputs, Mr. Speaker said, compared to 2013, increased by 97.2%, Mr. Speaker said. We have now, agricultural produce exports, Mr. Speaker said, we have now surpassed 100 million mark, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, we will continue to support agricultural growth and development so that while agricultural sector grows and develops, all those engaged in the agriculture sector will continue to benefit, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, we are also doing a lot of work in terms of promoting the core high-value crops, Mr. Speaker said, that is pushing our export sector, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, we have turned around the rice industry, Mr. Speaker said. Thanks to Fiji Rice Limited for supporting our initiative, Mr. Speaker said. Also thanks to the government of China for providing us support with regard to agriculture machinery, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, we are setting up a model farm in Latoka, Mr. Speaker said, thanks to funding from the European Union through our NGO partner, Dialogue Fiji, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, in the model farm, we have a hydroponic setup, we will have a nursery, Mr. Speaker said, we will have a drip irrigation setup on the farm, Mr. Speaker said. As we speak, it's under construction, should be ready in 3 weeks' time, Mr. Speaker said, for running of short courses, training of farmers, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, our agriculture sector work is continuing, Mr. Speaker said. We will take agriculture to different height, different place, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, let me now turn to environment, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Environment in the next financial year will continue to ensure that Fiji's natural environment is protected, resources are sustainably utilized, own developments are sustainable, ozone layer protected, and waste is properly managed. Mr. Speaker, the budgetary allocation for Ministry of Environment is 4.7 million that will be utilized to undertake various work, including, Mr. Speaker, $1.5 million that has been provided to extend the number of landfill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the department is cognizant of the fact that preventing pollution reduces our financial and environmental cost overlays, Mr. Speaker. We have an allocation for 132,000 for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just yesterday we launched another significant policy for Fiji's mangrove management and conservation. Mr. Speaker, the mangrove management and conservation policy will further underpin the existing institutional frameworks that promote conservation, management and protection of our mangrove system. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry supports the Twin Jobs for Nature program that was announced by the Honourable Minister for Economy with an allocation of $4 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to announce today in the House that the Department under the Department of Environment, under the able leadership of our Permanent Secretary, Mr. Whiteley, and Director of Environment, Ms. Sandeep Singh, we were able to secure more than $18 million over the last 24 months in external donor funding to support our biodiversity conservation and environmental protection works, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are various donor and development partners that are working, including the Global Environmental Facility, JEF, the European Union, and the Jeff Bezos Earth Fund, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Jeff Bezos, founder and executive chair of the online retail giant Amazon, announced the establishment of a Bezos Earth Fund in February 2020. This philanthropic move committed US $10 billion with the express goal of help preserve, protect natural world with an emphasis on social justice as climate change it disproportionately affects the poor and marginal communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this global initiative is intended to fund scientists, activists, NGOs, and any effort that offers a real possibility to help conserve and protect our natural resources. Mr. Speaker, the department has also secured another investment of 600,000 Fijian dollars from the WWF to support our mangrove conservation project, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the department is working with PEC Waste Plus to formulate an organic waste management program, which is funded by the European Union for a sum of US $300,000. Mr. Speaker, we are also working with Safeguarding Marine and Terrestrial Biodiversity in Fiji. Project is another global environmental facility funded initiative where we are able to secure US $7.2 million, Mr. Speaker, will be executed by the Department of Environment over the next 5 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are also undertaking a work on bycatch and integrated ecosystem management, Mr. Speaker, with the funding from European Union of $1.1 million. So, Mr. Speaker, we are also bringing in efficiency in the environmental assessment section, Mr. Speaker. So people do complain about it. Mr. Speaker, last year alone we processed 212 EIA applications at the value of about $1 billion, to be exact, $0.973 billion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the waterways area, we've got allocations by the Ministry of Economy to undertake work in terms of maintaining our drainage system, both the scheme drains and outside the schemes, as well as, Mr. Speaker, undertaking drainage to protect our rural residential communities, the villages, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, we are also undertaking a number of projects to protect our coastal communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, some of this work, Mr. Speaker, we are securing money from outside donors, Mr. Speaker. We're not sitting here and say when the requests come from the communities and we say that it's not in the line item, not in the budget, and so therefore we can't do your coastal rehabilitation work now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have done 9 coastal nature-based CO last year, Mr. Speaker, all funded from external donors, Mr. Speaker. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, we have got funding from IDB worth $1.5 million to do nature-based CO, construct nature-based CO at 10 sites, Mr. Speaker. We've also got funding from British High Commission to do a nature-based CO at Namotukula village this year, Mr. Speaker. So that's 11, Mr. Speaker. Then we've got budgetary allocation to do another 10 sites, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker say, as we speak, Mr. Speaker say, we are also right now, Mr. Speaker say, undertaking riverbank protection work at 2 sites, Mr. say, funded by European Union through Dialogue Fiji, our NGO partner, Mr. Speaker say. One is a 4-kilometer nature-based riverbank protection work at Mahendra's River, Mr. Speaker say, funded by R2R. 400-meter nature-based solution at Gelimumu village, funded by European Union through Dialogue Fiji. 300-meter nature-based solution riverbank protection work at Navutu village, Latoka, funded by European Union through Dialogue Fiji, Mr. Speaker say. So, Mr. Speaker say, these works are continuing, Mr. Speaker say, and our Department of Waterways, Department of Environment, Department of Agriculture, while improving the delivery, the efficiency of resource delivery, service delivery within the ministry, we are also at the same time, Mr. Speaker say, actively writing proposals and looking for money from donors to ensure that we are at the forefront of supporting our communities, be it protection of the communities from climate change activities so that they can carry out the activity, also be secured. Also, Mr. Speaker, in terms of pushing agricultural output expansion for food security and as well as for the export, improve export earnings and agricultural production, Mr. Speaker said. So, Mr. Speaker, say, I once again commend the Honourable Prime Minister and the Attorney General and Minister of Economy for the vision in taking this nation forward, Mr. Speaker said. Mr. Speaker said, for once I beg the community on the other side, the members on the other side, don't be emotional, Mr. Speaker said. When there's a bill that is tabled, whether it's Bill 17 or whichever bill, look at the rationale behind it, Mr. Speaker said. Don't unnecessarily raise emotions, Mr. Speaker said. Look at how these bills, that the job of the Parliament is to scrutinize the bill to ensure that we improve service delivery, Mr. Speaker said. Bills, legislation, Mr. Speaker say, are not static documents, Mr. Speaker say. These are live documents, Mr. Speaker say. Over time, they need to be reviewed, Mr. Speaker say. So, Mr. Speaker say, for once, I plead with the members of the opposition side to support this budget. This appropriation bill is our people need support and protection during this difficult time, Mr. Speaker say. So, Mr. Speaker say, I'm asking the members of the opposition, please don't deny assistance to our people that is coming through this budget. Please rise up and join our side and also your own member, Honourable Bulitabo, in supporting and commending this appropriation bill 2021-2022, Mr. Speaker say. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, Mr. Speaker say. Thank you. Naka.
I thank the Honourable Minister for his contribution to the debate.